Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is our Let's Talk Arsenal series. But for this show, it is an episode of the Canton and Symeou show, as always, joined for the first time in a while by Mr. Harry Symeou. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. A bit cold. I've got the tracksuit and the body warmer on at the moment. I've had the heating on in here all day, and I'm still cold. I'm still cold. It's we've had this conversation before. I'm not made for this weather. I'm just not wired for it.
True, it is the background. Yeah, for sure. I say that I've lived in the UK, but from the UK, genes all from the UK. You know, my DNA is very much here, and yet I still find it cold, and I have no excuse at all. So, you know, it is what it is regarding that. But I think that hopefully what will warm us up is some transfer. Oh wait, no, there's no transfers either. That maybe we'll have a good patch of form. No, don't have that either. We're gonna have to really dig deep to find something to warm ourselves up. But the chat box's positivity is certainly going to help us. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in and joining us. As always, do drop a like on the video. You can, of course, find Harry's channel in today's video title. If you're not aware, it is the Chronicles of a Gooner. Of course, make sure you go and subscribe. How have you been enjoying your festive period, Harry, and your new year as well? I know it's 2 weeks into it, but it's 2023 was so bad that I just feel like 2024 had to come.
I enjoyed Christmas because I wasn't that busy work-wise around it. Last year, I remember around the Christmas period, I think I went to 9 games in 12 days. Not just Arsenal games, obviously, I was covering other games as well. And I just, like, Christmas completely passed me by this last year. So this time it was quite nice, actually. It was a lot more chilled. Arsenal not playing on Boxing Day obviously helped with that as well. And it was good. But I have to say, I've struggled for motivation at the start of this year. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Like, I feel like I haven't got going yet. So hopefully in the next sort of week or so, with Arsenal coming back into action, we can get back onto it. And hopefully Arsenal can pick up a positive result and this cloud of negativity can just move along.
Yeah, I feel like the form over Christmas it's one of those where the year comes to an end. And so more than any other time, you remember most, I think, the end of a period. And if the period ends being last year with such a negative period of form, it just makes the year seem worse, I think, from the perspective of Arsenal. Now we've got a chance, of course, to put things right. We sadly weren't able to do that in our first game of 2024 with the match against Liverpool in the FA Cup. But now with Crystal Palace coming at home, and then you've got a chance to go to Forest and kind of, you know, in some ways deal with that banana skin of a game, which has always cost us down in the years as well. And then you've got a redemption story against Liverpool at the Emirates, which hopefully Arsenal can achieve and really change the rhetoric. But before we get to that, we have to navigate the rest of the January transfer window, although it doesn't seem like there is much to navigate because it doesn't seem like much is happening. Are you disappointed with how it's gone so far, or were you already kind of succumbed to knowing that it was going to be like this?
I knew that we weren't going to do an Ivan Toney deal or a Dusan Vlahovic deal or anything that big. You know, I was pretty sure that was going to be the case. So I'm not surprised by that. I do think we need something though. I really do. I look at the way we kind of waned at the end of the year and sort of coming into the new year, the way we've struggled, the way a number of players have all lost form at the same time. And then you look to the bench and you look to the squad and you think, well, what can I do to shake this up and change it? And there isn't that much that you can do. That's partly down to injuries, but I think it's partly to do with the way we've built this squad as well. And I did an episode on it the other day, and I know a lot of people disagreed and sort of, thought that I was talking out of my backside, basically. But what I was saying was that there's obviously an emphasis on buying players that are versatile. That was obviously something that Mikel Arteta was really, really keen on last summer and the summer before that. And that is because I think he thinks that obviously when you've got X amount of money to spend, however amount of money that is, you want to maximize it, right? You want to bring in someone that can help you in more than one or two ways. But then you get to this stage, like when people draw out a team sheet and they do like the goalkeeper and they'll put Raya Ramsdale's names underneath it. And then the right back will be White, Timber, Tomiyasu. And then and you go along the team like that and you're just going, oh, look at our depth. The problem is when you've got the same names in different positions,
Yeah.
you can end up in a position where you lose one body, one player, and all of a
Mm.
sudden you're short in 2 or 3 areas across your team. And obviously the benefit of the versatility is that you can play in different ways, is that you can use those players when the amount of injuries are manageable to cover one another and all of that. And it's great. But then when you have a high volume of injuries, you have a problem. And I think we've got that problem at this moment in time. I still look at our team and I think, you know, on the right wing, we don't have another option outside of Bukayo Saka. Like Mikel Arteta might argue that Trossard or Martinelli or Nelson could play there, but do they do it to the same level that they play on the left? No, they don't. I think it's fair to say. You know, you look at Kai Havertz coming in, and maybe you thought if you were Mikel Arteta, well, he can back us up in the centre forward position, and that would be great because he's something different to what Jesus and Nketiah are. But then you have to use him at left 8 because Emile Smith-Rowe hasn't been fit for most of the season because Fabio Vieira is out because, you know, you don't have those alternatives. So you end up in a position basically where if you're so over-reliant on versatility that if you have a high volume of injuries, you just don't have enough bodies. And I think we're at that point now.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think that what we've found this season in particular is that the most versatile players are the ones that we have started to lose as well. Like Tomiyasu, who can play across the back four, as you mentioned. You know, Timber can play right back, left back, and had played all of last season at centre half for Ajax as well. So, and then you add players that like Vieira, like Smith-Rowe, who have been out. Jesus, of course, our key centre forwards, have been missing. Gabriel Martinelli and Trossard have also missed games this season. Saka missed arguably the biggest game of the season against Man City, and we still managed to win that one as well. And then Partey, who's gone from the most available he's ever been for us last season to the least available we've ever had him this season. And all of those factors combined to be where we are. And if you look at the Man City squad, for instance, it's, you know, they are in a similar position at times. They have got 18, 19 players that they rely on over the course of the season. And a lot of that is similar in a sense of that you look at that back four, how versatile Stones can be for them, how versatile Gvardiol is, left back, left-sided centre-back, Ake, the same, Akanji, very versatile in his defensive play as well. And if you lose Rodri, you know, their record when they don't have Rodri compared to when they do is a stark comparison. You know, it's a real big contrast between the two records as well. Their forward players are very versatile. You look how Foden can play. You look where Grealish can play. Alvarez, of course, as well. They've got huge amount. Bernardo Silva is a massive example too. You know, there's loads of examples of versatility across the treble winners, and that is where we, I think, should be as a club. You should aim to have a core group of players that can play in multiple positions. But there is a reality that we find ourselves in that our injuries this season have been horrific. What do you make of it, the tagline of naming that as an excuse? Because often when I talk about injuries being a legitimate reason as to why it's not been as good as it has been last season, I'm told that that's an excuse. So I think it's a genuine reason. But why is it that it's labelled an excuse for some, do you think?
No idea. I think that you can frame anything really in whatever way you want to frame it, depending on what your argument is, depending on what your angle is. So if you're someone that wants to pick holes in everything that Mikel Arteta does, then you're going to say, you know, we've gone about it the wrong way. And it doesn't matter that we've got injuries. We should still be able to cope because injuries are part of the reality of the sport. But if you look at it the other way, where you can say, well, you know, the fact that we've lost these players at key moments and, you know, we've been without players that would have normally just covered us in multiple positions, you know, it's a big problem and it's a big issue. You can frame stuff whatever way you want to frame it. And what I find interesting is that over the last, you know, I don't know, 18 months, the noise around the squad building has been completely different. You know, people have been saying, oh, look how well we've done. You know, look how quickly we've gone from top 4 contenders to title contenders. This is brilliant. There's still more work to be done. I think we all acknowledge that. But look at the leap we've made and the leap we've taken because we brought in some real game-changing players. And then the minute you get a rough patch of results, it's all, oh, well, the squad's wrong. Now, I might be a bit guilty of that as well because maybe because of the recent results and because I still feel like in certain positions we really don't have an answer, you know, I've overthought it over the course of the last couple of weeks. I'm happy to hold my hands up and say that. But I think it's all about the perspective that you want to come at this from. somebody asked me a question on my podcast this morning. I thought it was a really interesting question. And the question was, is Arteta the man before the man? So is Arteta the one that, is going to take us to glory, or is he the one that has essentially laid the foundations? But in order to go to that level, we need to go and find someone of a higher caliber. I don't think that's a wild take to have. I don't think that's a wild opinion to have. It's a really valid opinion to have. But I think he's done enough to deserve the opportunity to have a crack at going to that next level. And where I get annoyed is when people sort of convolate the two things, right? So it's conflate, that's the word. When they try and put the two things,
you're going between convolute and convolute.
Yeah. I was
like, is he going to get there?
I'm on I'm on TGT, so I've got to make up words, right? It's part of the trademark.
It's the way it goes. Convoflate is now a new one. Yeah,
there we go. But like, you can say that you don't think he's the one to take you to the next level and to finish the project off, but you can't discredit the good work he's done so far. That's where I get annoyed. That's the bit that irritates me and frustrates me. But is it an excuse? Well, you can label it as an excuse, but when Manchester United are struggling because they've been missing loads of key players all season, I didn't hear any Arsenal fans saying, "Oh, well, it's just an excuse," like, as in it's okay, it's fine. We do that, don't we? We're tribal. We do that. Chelsea have been missing loads of players, but no one will have it when they want to talk about the £1 billion that they spent. So I think it's just the way people package things up, and whatever narrative is driving them, and whatever their underlying opinion is, that's going to come out in the way that they talk about it.
No, I think the dynamic of Arsenal fans in general, like as a fan base, I think we are the most civil war-y of all different teams. We are far more likely to have an argument with a fellow Arsenal fan than we are a rival fan about, football. Like, and back in the day when I was at school, it was completely different. It was on the playground. It was you arguing with Man United fans and Liverpool fans because I live down south and that's where Man United and Liverpool fans live. So in regards to kind of those debates, they've changed over the years. But I absolutely agree on the sense of the Arteta being potentially the guy before the guy. But I also have talked about the idea that I think that you should always aim to be, you should be able to be on board the idea that if you're moving in the direction towards the goal, then you've got a right to stick by that train that you're on, and I think the Arteta train right now is taking us in the direction where I want this club to go, which is back to the top, competing for titles season upon season. Is this going to take us to the Premier League title? I don't know yet, but I've not got enough evidence to suggest to me, based upon the context of the Premier League as it is today, to tell me that no, it's not going to do that. And so that's why and I also don't see another train right now to hop on that's going to take me to that goal right now, because I can only see it being, I mean, you saw the news today, Harry. How are you feeling about Arsenal fans are about to jump on the Mourinho train?
Oh, come on, man. Mourinho's been, I don't want to use the term washed. I've seen some people use the term washed about Jose Mourinho. I just think that in the early stages of his career, he set the bar so high with what he was achieving.
Yeah.
And he's now at a point where he's no longer in that elite bracket of manager. I still think he's a good manager.
One trophy in 7 years.
Yeah, but he's got this thing that he can sort of, I think he can create this siege mentality, and he can create a good atmosphere at a lot of the clubs he's been at. Now, it didn't happen at Spurs, and it didn't really happen at Man United, although he still, I think, got the highest win rate of a United manager since Sir Alex Ferguson. So, he's still got something there. But like, you talk to Roma fans, for example, and I work really closely with a few, and they love the mood that Jose brought to the club. The connection that he had with the Olympico and the fans, they love that. But eventually you always get to the point with Mourinho where you go, okay, the vibes aren't really doing it anymore, and the football's dire. Roma have got a lot of financial constraints at the moment, and they're going to need to build from the ground up. And they've obviously looked at Mourinho and gone, you're not the one that's going to do that for us. And that's right. Doesn't mean he's a terrible manager, but I don't think he's the answer for Arsenal. I mean, come on. The thing is, I've never said about Arteta, and I've defended him a lot, but I've never said that he's as good as Pep or as good as Klopp, because he's not.
No, he's not.
Right? He's not. So outside of those two, where do you go? Like, people will talk about Carlo Ancelotti. I think Carlo Ancelotti, for me, is probably There's an argument when he retires, he'll go down as the greatest club manager of all time.
Potentially.
But he's just signed a new contract with Real Madrid. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to get Carlo Ancelotti. You're not going to get Jurgen Klopp. You're not going to get Pep Guardiola. So what's the obvious solution? Like, people are calling for him to go because we've had a few bad results. But where are we going next is the question. Because there's no point in replacing without having a plan in place. So, yeah, I know we've kind of digressed onto the Arteta chat, but we are going in the right direction. We are on our way.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going to need someone else to get us over the line. I don't even dispute that. You know, I love Mikel Arteta, but you know, if over the next couple of years we're not taking that next step, then I think you have to look at it. But right now, where do you go?
I think no, it's Arteta's absolutely part of this conversation about January because he's taking a lot of flack for, you know, what we're experiencing during January. The question is always going to be, where do you go, you know, afterwards? And like for Arsenal, it's not like Chelsea. Like, you have to make the right choice. Like, you can't afford, like Arsenal can't afford to get it wrong and to just take a risk. That's why I always think like suggestions of Zidane, for instance, when he comes up in conversation, like only ever managed at Real Madrid, which was a club in which it gave them the platform to you know, of ridiculous money and ridiculous talent. And not only that, but he knew that club inside out from his time in the youth side as well. And if you are Zidane at Real Madrid, like what the aura around him, you know, in that Real Madrid dressing room and what that delivers is, you're not going to see him rock up at Arsenal. You're just not going to see that happen. It really isn't going to happen. I think that if Arsenal go for somebody else, like just hypothetically, like if there was the stage after, you know, after Arteta, I think that it has to be someone of a standing who has won major honours on a consistent basis. And the problem is that, well, Pep Guardiola kind of takes all those up most years. So there isn't really anyone outside of him that does that. And the next best option, as you've already mentioned, is Jurgen Klopp, who obviously is the only one to really be able to challenge Pep. The other one you look at is in the Premier League era, modern era, is Antonio Conte, who went to Spurs. And, you know, yes, he beat Arsenal to fourth place, but did not end their trophy drought. We talk about taking Arsenal to the next level. Well, the next level for Spurs was just a trophy. It wasn't even necessarily getting back into the top four, and he couldn't do that there. Now, you might say that's because it's Spurs, but it's still a club that had Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, some incredible talent there, but he wasn't able to do that. You've got to find the right coach to take on this job when Arteta, and there will be a day when Arteta does leave. There will be a day, and you know, there's rumours at the moment about Barcelona. I think that is a potential next job for him. Is Barcelona in the future? I can see that one day potentially happening. If not, PSG as well, I think are a potential next offer for Mikel Arteta. And when we're talking about these clubs, that's the pedestal he's put himself on in terms of jobs. If he was ever to leave Arsenal, he's put himself into the pantheon of those types of clubs. When Unai Emery left Arsenal, for instance, he wasn't talked about for those jobs. He went to Villarreal and has now gone to Aston Villa, and he's doing an excellent job, by the way, at Aston Villa. But it's the work that Arteta has done at Arsenal that is going to put him into those brackets of coaches when he's and brackets of clubs when he does one day move on from Arsenal. But he needs, while he's at Arsenal, his kind of vision to be delivered. Do you think that Arteta expected to have more backing in this window, or do you think he would have been savvy enough to know that whoever he signed in the summer, especially when Raya came in on loan and the indications that gave us about do you think he went into this season knowing that he'd go through January without much else?
I think he had to. I think the club had to, and I think we as fans should have seen it coming as well. I've been saying it for maybe a year, and someone pulled up a comment that I made about a year ago saying, we shouldn't listen to you because you said that we don't have any money, and then we went and bought Declan Rice. I never said that Arsenal don't have any money. I said that at some point,
saying something you said and taking it in the wrong way and then saying it differently. That doesn't happen.
Never happens, does it? What I said was, given the overhaul of the squad under Mikel Arteta and our inability to get decent money for a lot of the dead wood that we've had to move out along the way, we were always going to face a point where either because of profit and sustainability rules or because the Cronkies just weren't going to do it anymore, we were always going to hit a bit of a brick wall in terms of being able to spend. Because for 3 or 4 years, Tom, we've just spent,
Yeah.
and we've
Yeah.
hardly bought anything in the other way. So if people didn't see a point coming where we would have to slow that down, whether that be because of rules or because of us as a football club not having the capacity to do that, or the ownership not having the want to do that, then I don't know what planet you've been living on, because it was always going to happen. You go and spend 100 million on your marquee midfielder in the summer. One of the big debates that always comes up is, should we have bought Kai Havertz? Should we have signed Kai Havertz? Should we have spent
That was going
65
to be my
million?
next question. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I think we overpaid for Kai Havertz. Never shied away from that. And it goes back to the point that I was making about the versatility thing. I think that a lot of the reason that Arsenal were willing to pay what they paid was because they looked at him and went, well, hold on a minute. He's not just a solution to the midfield if we need him there, but he's also an option up front for us. So it's kind of like we're signing 2 players.
I think he will. I don't think he's a solution for the midfield at all.
No,
That's my view. Yeah.
no, I don't either. But I think that's how they looked at it. I think that they were willing to go that extra mile on the cost because they thought that he would be able to offer them cover in a number of positions. But then if you don't have a left 8 all season,
Yeah.
then his ability to cover you up front and give you something there is limited, isn't it? So it comes back to that point of maybe we were better off buying 2 30 million pound players that are specialists in each of those 2 positions and doing it that way. So I accept there's a debate there, but he hasn't been our worst player this season. He hasn't been culpable for some of the defeats that we've suffered. And this just lazy analysis around him all the time. It drives me mad. If people want to say that they don't agree with the signing, don't think it was the right thing to do, I accept that. And I think I'm kind of maybe on the side of that, having seen, how our squad has evolved over the last sort of 6 to 8 months or whatever. But it's just, let's look at what the actual problem is. And I think it's the approach that we've got slightly wrong, rather than, trying to scapegoat one individual.
Yeah. I think that the Havertz situation is a genuine point of criticism of the club's recruitment at the moment. If you were saying making a judgment on January 16th, I'd say yes, Arsenal could have better spent £65 million, and I don't think that's controversial, to say that at all. But the fact of the matter is that of the work that Arsenal have done in the market in terms of the investment, I had reason and still have reason to trust what they choose to invest in, because of how they've turned a club from when obviously Arteta took over in 11th and taken them to a title race in 3 full seasons. And we're now into this 4th full season in a position where 4 full season, yes. Where I think obviously we should be looking to challenge again. Yes, I think we overachieved last season in terms of what we did. I did not expect us to challenge for a title, but when you do that, you can't slide so far backwards in terms of falling out into a top 4 race, rather than, this season at the absolute minimum, Arsenal should be qualifying for the Champions League as a minimum. And I'm not talking about scrapping for top 4. I'm talking about we should be comfortably inside the top 4 this season.
Agreed.
Otherwise, I think we have regressed. And so Arsenal's spending is something that will come more under scrutiny as the years go by now, especially with these profit and sustainability rules, which are going to mean that if we make an error in the market, the punishment for making that error is more than ever before. We always used to say, me and you back in the day, like we're talking 5 years ago, we used to use the line of, because it was very much relevant at the time, of Arsenal can't afford to miss in the market, whereas City and Chelsea can go in and spend huge amounts of money on players that aren't going to work for them, and then they can just go and spend again. But now, with the prevalence of profit and sustainability, that can't happen. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Like, you can't afford to miss. We have missed, but not just with Kai Havertz. We've missed a lot over the last few years, and I think every manager misses. I think every recruitment team misses. I don't think you will find a club in world football that haven't put down a big amount of money on a player that it didn't work out for. Even Manchester City, Calvin Phillips. What a waste of money that's been. You look at how many fullbacks Pep Guardiola's been through, how many goalkeepers he went through at the start. There was lots of mistakes on City's part as well, who people talk about as being, the best run club. I know they've got the finances to do it, but obviously people talk about how well they run their club and all the rest of it. And I think that's fair, but they miss too. Everybody misses when it comes to transfers. The problem is that on the one hand, the profit and sustainability stuff is handicapping us now, and causing us a problem in terms of, the next bit of our build. It puts a spanner in the works. But at the same time, in the long term, I actually quite like it. I want this to be in place. I don't understand why people are
I
like
agree.
up in arms about it. It needs to be there.
I get one criticism of it, which is it's too late. It's coming too late. I think it's good that it's here, but for me, it's too late because the likes of City and Chelsea have already built their foundation. They've already spent huge sums of money without restriction that has got them into the equation. If this was in place at the start of the millennium, right, it would be Arsenal and Man United and Liverpool the three. I don't, City and Chelsea would not be in the frame anywhere near what
Agreed.
they are now, and that's the issue I have with the restrictions. But it's not. But it needed to come in. But that is obviously a downside of it.
Yeah, for sure. Clive makes a great comment. Clive Palmer's in the chat.
Clive doesn't make any great comment.
Yeah, he says, but he's right. He says, with signings, we have the advantage of in the moment hindsight. When we don't win in 3, we look at choices. When we beat City, we were very happy. Exactly. And that's why I'm finding it really, really difficult to process so much of the negativity at the moment. Because 3-4 weeks ago, when we were top of the Premier League, it was, look at Arsenal. They've got way more control in games now. Look at Arsenal. They've grown up. They've matured, etc., etc. And 3-4 weeks down the line, it's Arsenal are a disaster. Everything's crashing and burning. Get rid of Mikel Arteta. We've messed it all up. It's like, how can you go from 0 to 100 in the space of 3 weeks? If we go and drop points against Crystal Palace at the weekend, and then we drop points against Nottingham Forest, and we really are looking out of ideas, dead on our feet, I will accept that the criticism is justified. But to me, it's too much too soon in terms of the level of criticism. And, this season is not done yet. We could easily beat Palace. We could easily beat Forest. And if we go and beat Liverpool at the Emirates Stadium, we're 2 points off them at the top of the table.
Yeah.
We could easily get through Porto in the Champions League, and then we're in the last 8 of Europe's premier competition. This season is not done. And last season should have taught us that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. That should have taught us better than anything else. That should be a real lesson learned for us. We maybe in some cases got carried away last season, hoping for a positive outcome. Let's not get carried away with the potential of a negative outcome, because there's still a lot of football to be played.
Yes, there is an awful lot of football to be played. And I think that you're right. We can't start just making judgments over the course of where this whole project is right now. Because if you were looking at kind of a graph of Arsenal's progression under Arteta in this regime, last season took a huge hike up that graph. And this season, you're not going to see that same upward trend because we went to second in the table. We want to try and hover, around there with the scope of going up that one more level to getting into first place. But as an overall progression that we've made and the amount of how combative we are, how competitive we are, how resilient we can be, the objective this season was to look at last season and look at why we didn't win the league and try and solve those problems. It was to try and find out what those big reasons were. One was obviously depth in defence. And we went and spent £38 million on a defender that we've now lost for the course of this season. So that was obviously one strategy they put in place that they've not been able to implement. Obviously, Declan Rice came in, but we went off the back of a season with Partey available for all of it. I don't think the plan was for Partey and Rice to rotate. The plan was for them to form a partnership over the course of this season, which would take us from a midfield perspective into a different stratosphere. And I know that Partey started in this weird auxiliary hybrid role at the start of the season, but I think there is so many, with the window open at that point, and what was going on with Gabriel and with Zinchenko not fit at that point as well. I just think there was far many questions to assume that was going to be the norm going through the rest of the season. I genuinely believe it would have been Partey and Rice that eventually, I mean, you look at the game against Man City in the Community Shield, they both started next to one another in that game. And I think that would have been the way forwards in the long term. But where we find ourselves now is we've had a bad patch of form. Liverpool are far better than they were last season. I say far better. Last season was an anomaly for Liverpool. Liverpool are an incredibly good side. They've competed with City on nearly every factor on a smaller budget than Man City have been able to do. But that difference in budget is probably the reason why they've not been able to haul in City more than just the one time in the league that they managed to do it under Klopp. So Arsenal are very similar in that fact that we need to be looking to try and compete in the same way that Liverpool do, unless we were to able to spend like City are, and we're just not. So we need to be looking at trying to emulate that Liverpool team as much as we can, getting as close to Manchester City as we possibly can, and getting the fortune that you need to do it. Because I'm sorry, but Arsenal are never winning a league title without luck. And I think not enough people realise that, Harry. I think that there's not enough appreciation for the fact for Arsenal to win a title, they're going to need luck to do it.
Yeah, you always need a bit of luck to do it, unless you're really outstanding. Man City have been outstanding for a long time, for a lot of reasons that we've kind of been over already. So I don't want to go through that again. But the Liverpool point is a good one. Jurgen Klopp, for all his brilliance, has only been able to wrestle the title away from the Etihad once. Once. Now that's not because he's not very good. It's not because Liverpool aren't very good. It's because Manchester City are that good. They are that good. And there are question marks around how they got to where they are and all the rest of it. And that is a debate for another day. But what I think Liverpool have probably done better than Arsenal is, it's not probably, they have. They've performed.
Got a better manager.
Well, yeah, they've got a better manager, of course, but they've also done really well in terms of picking up bits of silverware along the way outside of the Premier League. Yeah, in terms of cups, Champions League, they've had a couple of really good cracks at the Champions League as well. More than a couple of really good cracks at it under Jurgen Klopp. Obviously, he's won it. It's been to a final, all the rest of it. I think because of that, people look at Jurgen Klopp's achievements at Liverpool. And although the league thing is an issue and, it's not where they want to be, he's kind of been able to kind of keep that pressure at bay because he's been able to pick up those trophies. And where I will criticize Arteta, and not so much this season because you get drawn at home to Liverpool in the FA Cup. There's not much you can do about it. Even last season, we had Oxford in the third round, I think, off the top of my head. And then we went to City, didn't we, in the fourth round? And we got knocked out there. We've had some awful draws. West Ham away in the Carabao Cup was in an easy draw. I think, was it Liverpool that knocked us out in the Carabao last season as well?
Yeah.
So, but where he needed to do a bit better, I think, was in particular in the Europa League. I think if he'd have won a Europa League, that would have, kept the Wolves away a little bit. And 100%. I think some of our Europa League campaigns under Mikel Arteta, it doesn't matter how much you rate him, they've been really poor and really disappointing. And I just look at it and I think, at a club like Arsenal, where there is going to be a pressure to win, you're going to need to pick up some bits along the way. It's like if you want people to, if you want a dog to follow you down the road, dropping a biscuit behind you every few yards is a great way of doing it because there's something for those people to latch onto until you get and follow until your final destination. And, maybe we haven't had enough of that. And that's why people are feeling the frustration. But, as well, like Bukayo Saka last season, fantastic. I'm not criticizing the guy. Martinelli, the same. Odegaard, the same. This season, they haven't been as good. Think about what Liverpool have got. Yeah, Mo Salah does it every single year, man. And that's the difference between a world-class player that's ripe and ready and a player that's got the potential but isn't quite there yet, I would say.
No, you're spot on. And I think the other thing to say about Liverpool and the difference between what Arteta had and what Klopp had when he came in, besides the fact that the experience that Klopp had with Dortmund and what he did there, and that was kind of the perfect club. If you're going to go from one club to Liverpool, Dortmund's a fantastic example of that next step as a coach. And I think the difference also is that Arteta came into a group that he knew the only people he was keeping was the starlets. Was the kids coming through like Saka, Smith Rowe, Martinelli, Saliba. They were the ones that he was going to keep. They're the ones that he was going to develop and build the squad around. Whereas you look at Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp inherited Roberto Firmino, he inherited Jordan Henderson, he inherited Felipe Coutinho, of course, who, yes, was sold, but was there during a key period in which they then ousted Arsenal from the top four and replaced them in fourth spot. which then got them back into the Champions League, which Arteta was at a side that had been without that Champions League for a significant period of time. Klopp inherited a team that had only just, I think, 2 seasons prior, very nearly won the league themselves as well. And so it's important to remember, of course, what ultimately Jurgen Klopp inherited and then added to whilst he was there as a manager. And it was that recruitment. You look at the signings they made during the time that he was there. First full summer, Mane and Wijnaldum come in. Next summer, Van Dijk, Salah, Robertson come in. Next summer, Alisson, Fabinho come in. And the following summer, they didn't sign anyone other than Minamino in January because they'd already built a side that was looking at trying to challenge. I think that was the season that they won the was that the Champions League winning year? I think it was in 1920.
I think so, yeah.
Before? And then the following year, they had Diogo Jota and Thiago. You had like a Bayern Munich world-class midfielder to your team as well. And yes, his availability's not been great, but they had the youth and the depth to be able to add that next piece of the puzzle. Luis Diaz and Canate come in the season after, and then they can add Darwin Nunez and Cody Gakpo as their attacking options. And then this summer, of course, they've had to kind of rip up the midfield after Jordan Henderson has gone and Fabinho has moved on as well. And now you've got players like Szoboszlai, McAllister, Gravenberch, and Endo. That's 4 midfielders coming into that squad this season. And ultimately, Arteta has had to look at that squad that he inherited. I'm going to have to change the title of this video because we've been so much not off talking about January, which is fine. I like it. But what is so interesting about the difference in projects is what their starting points was as coaches. And also, the other thing before I let you chime in on this is that Jurgen Klopp came into a Liverpool team that knew that Man City were their target. Arteta comes into an Arsenal team that knows that it's not just Man City, but that Liverpool are also there. And yes, last season they weren't as good, but Liverpool realistically are always going to be there as well to try and battle away with at the title. And so that changes the dynamic as well.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I think about all of that, and I think, yeah, there's a lot of valid points there, and there's a lot of reasons for why the kind of situation has unfolded the way it has and stuff. And I'm not for a second saying that I want Mikel gone. Yeah, you know me, Tom. I'm very much on the Arteta train.
He's driving it, guys.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. I'm the guy that says mind the gap and all the rest of it. Like I'm really wanting this thing to work, and I think it will eventually. But also as well, like in football, you can never really get to a point, I don't think, where your squad is perfect. And I don't think you can ever get to the point where you have you have cover in every potential issue that you could face. So like Clive mentions in the chat, Zinchenko, Partey, Tomiyasu, Jesus, those 4 players were all brought in by Mikel Arteta.
Clive might as well come on this podcast at this point.
He might as well. Yeah, get him on. Get him on. Those are all players that Mikel brought in to elevate the level of the team. And they have done that, but their availability has been a problem. Somebody like Jorginho, that one was a short-term fix. I would even consider giving him another year extension, to be honest, because I think when he's come in at every point this season, he's been fine. I think he's been really good. But you think that you've got your cover in this position and that position, and that you're ready to go, and then somebody goes off the cliff in terms of their injuries, and somebody's form drops off that you didn't expect. I don't think you can ever get to a place where everything is as you want it. And that's where maybe a top class manager earns his money, by being able to make those slight tweaks, maybe adjusting systems, maybe changing things in game and giving you those slight advantages. But, and that's what Klopp has. And that's what I think Pep has that maybe Mikel hasn't got yet. But we also have to be realistic about his journey as a coach and how he's still at the very beginning of that. And he will get better. I think he has got better since he first arrived. And the question is, if you can't tell me who should come in and replace him, then why are you calling for him to go? Like, the players are young, they're getting better, they're developing. So is the manager. I'm enjoying the ride. Do you know why, Tom? Because when I go to Arsenal now, I feel a connection to that team. I feel like, yeah, it might not always go our way, but I'm right behind that team. And I'll when they win, when they pull something amazing off, I'm always so happy for them. I didn't always feel that in the last few years. Not that I didn't care, but I didn't always feel that connection. I used to look at certain players and think, yeah, you're a good footballer, but you don't care. You don't have that connection to this football club. You're not, you're not desperate to see this club succeed. And a lot of that, it rubs off on supporters. And I think that's why you end up with this situation where you got some Arsenal fans that are 100% on the Arteta train and won't say a bad word about him. And then you've got the opposite end of the spectrum where people just don't like him, and because they feel like he's become a bit of a character and there's a bit of cheerleading going on, and they call it PR and all that they don't like it. But that's why you've got those diehards. When you've got those diehards, it means that connection is there, and maybe it causes you to be blind sometimes, and it causes you to overlook issues because you're so invested. But it's like when you love someone, right? No one's perfect. My wife will tell you I'm not perfect, but she's blinded by it all.
Yeah, I had someone ask me. Someone left a comment on my video. I'm trying to find it this morning. I don't know if I can find it, but someone actually asked me if I could define for them what PR meant. And I just said, like, it's the idea of defining PR in this sense is such a broad concept. Like, you can't put it down to that. But yeah, it's just one of those buzzwords, isn't it? At the moment, it's going around. We'll finish. Go on. Yeah.
Just before we dive into the questions, I'll tell you what has annoyed me in the midst of all this criticism that Arsenal are getting and all the rest of it. Listen, the criticism's fine. If you think we're on a bad run and you're concerned about where the rest of the season's going, that's a valid view and an opinion to have. What I hate is when it goes away from the football and it becomes about, oh, well, like I get it loads, and I know you get it as well. Oh, well, he can't say this because he has a media pass and he won't be able to. What a load of nonsense. What a load of rubbish that is.
I don't know how it works.
What a load of rubbish is.
Yeah, I know.
You pick up every back page on a Sunday morning after Arsenal have lost, and they'll be hammered on every back page. The representatives of those newspapers will still be at the Emirates the following week in the press box covering the football club.
Yeah.
It is the biggest load of rubbish. It's one of those massive misconceptions. Clubs are careful with what.
I was just going to jump in quickly. It's like the only way to prove that weren't the case is to like go up to Arteta and say, "I thought Arsenal were, whatever," and use the expletive you want to, insert into this sentence here, And it's like if you're the idea is that you can't say what you really think about Arsenal because you're worried about your position in a press box. Like, I did a show a year ago or whatever, 2 years ago, which is titled "Arteta should be sacked." Like, do you really think if Arsenal had a problem with me doing a show like that they would have let me back into Arsenal? If they let me back into the press box after I'd done a show like that, if I did a show talking about I think this Kai Havertz deal was a concern, they really I've spoken to Kai since I've done that show. I've done shows talking about the fact that I don't think Eddie Nketiah is the guy to take Arsenal to the next level in terms of a centre forward. If would Arsenal let me go and speak to him again if I said I think he's this, I think he's that? It's just ridiculous. I love this from Lone Star. Says I'm on probation at the moment. Yeah, it's true. I've crossed the line too many times with Arsenal. It just seems that if you're I'm trying to not swear when I'm trying to explain this, because that is really the only way. Like, if you just start mugging off Arsenal, if you just start saying Arsenal are this, Arsenal are that, and just going off on rants and stuff and getting angry, I'm not in that way inclined. Before I was ever dreamed of being in a position to be in a press box, I was never inclined to go off, unless it was about Emi Buendia. Actually, that's probably the only time I've really done it. But it's such. You're right to bring it out. It's such a ridiculous notion.
Yeah, it is, because you can be critical without sitting there effing and blinding about someone for an hour. Like you can do that. Those things can exist. They can happen. I've got friends that I work with very, very closely in radio that cover other clubs. I'm not going to mention the clubs because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but there are other clubs where that is the case. There are other clubs where they're really strict and they're really looking across your social media and everything that you say and everything that you do and everything that you're associated with. And I've got friends who have covered other clubs that have got into hot water with that club because they mentioned something on social media that the club didn't like. But at Arsenal, that is not the case. It's not. It's too big a football club to try and put that kind of stuff in place. You just could never do it. You could
No, of
never
course
put it
not.
into practice. It's
Of course not.
ridiculous. You know,
If
I've gone.
go on. No, you go.
I was just going to say, like, that is one of the things that, you know, it's just nonsense. Like, it's just people just trying to stir up an argument. Like, I can say whatever the hell I like about Arsenal Football Club, but my
Within reason.
personality,
I would say within reason.
well, my personality though is not to go off on someone and
No,
start
yeah.
effing and blinding about them.
You can say
Yeah,
whatever you like about Arsenal Football Club because you are never, ever, before you any association with Arsenal from being in a press box, were ever going to cross a line where it would become a problem. So you're
no,
right. I'll take
exactly.
that back.
Like, I can say what I want about Arsenal Football Club because whenever I'm criticizing anything or anyone, I'll always try and do it respectfully. Now, I wasn't always like that. Growing up, I wasn't like that. You know, you learn that as you become an adult and as you grow up. Some people haven't become adults, clearly, because they do sit there and you know, F and blind and whatever. And that's fine. That's up to them. That's the way they want to do it. But this false narrative that, you know, because we've been in a press box, it means that we can't criticize the club is, you know, take this for an example. I'll give you one example. Right? I really respect the guy as a broadcaster, but I don't agree with his opinions on the Arsenal in years gone by, especially Adrian Durham. I think he's a great broadcaster. Does around the grounds for TalkSport. I've been sat next to him in a press box when he's been doing it, and I look over and I look at his notes and I look at all the things he's got to get through, and I think you're an unreal broadcaster. But in the past, I used to listen to TalkSport in the car and get wound up by him.
So did I. I used to
things.
tweet him back in the day.
Yeah.
Like, how can you say that about Arsenal? Like,
yeah,
yeah.
all the things that guy used to say about Arsenal.
Yeah.
If TalkSport are covering an Arsenal game, mate, he's sitting
the
right there and it's no problem. And
there
everyone
all the
says hello and everyone's fine.
Like,
Like,
Samir
it's just
Nasri's there working.
exactly. That says it all. That's enough. Exactly.
It does. Like, it's so short-sighted because you look at that press box and you look at sort of some of the people that sit in the press box with us, what they've said, how critical they've been about Arsenal. They're there every week. They're there every week.
But apparently
You know,
they'll be banned. Apparently they'll be banned.
Yeah, they're going to get banned. Oh,
Yeah.
without a doubt, they're going to get banned. Goodness me. I did want to go to parts. Are you okay to go on a little bit past 5? That's all right.
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good.
You've taken up everyone's question time, mate, with that little rant.
Sorry.
Deal, so
I had to get it off my chest because
I appreciate it.
I've had
it was
about
worth
10
it.
tweets this week from people just going,
honestly, I get my comment section filled with people saying, you know, can't say what you want to say, you know, because you like the prawn sandwiches. For the record, I've never had a prawn sandwich. I'm not a big. I used to do tempura prawns at halftime, which we were talking about this the other day. Well, we were saying it's pies every week now. Like, are we to moan about what they serve at halftime?
How middle class have we become?
I know, it's incredibly snooty of us. Clive said, lads, and I know part one's basically been Canton, Symeou and Palmer this show. Clive says, lads, would you say that we have caught Liverpool? And I guess we can start off part 2 with this question to kick things off. I would say that we have, says Clive. I don't personally. I don't think we have. I don't think we're there because I think we lack the title-winning Champions League experience that Klopp and some of those players have, and B, I think that the options that Klopp has to change games are of a level above what we have right now. So I would say no. I would disagree with Clive on that personally.
I would say no as well, but we have significantly closed the gap.
No, without a doubt.
3 years ago, Liverpool and Manchester City were on another planet. It was becoming like La Liga, Barcelona and Real Madrid, you know, in years gone by where they've been really dominant. That was what the Premier League was starting to remind me of. But we've gone a long way in closing that gap. I think that Liverpool have got better options in terms of changing the game from an attacking point of view. But defensively, I don't think they're better off than us. I think they have a better goalkeeper than us in arguably a better back four when everybody's fit and available. But they haven't had a lot of the back four fit and available at times. They've been without Robertson a lot. You know, Trent defensively isn't great at times. Wonderful footballer, but, you know, you could ask questions about that. You know, Konate has taken a bit of time to get going, but I think he's okay now. Van Dijk.
I think he's brilliant.
Yeah, he's brilliant now. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Van Dijk, yeah, obviously an elite centre-back. But then beyond that, they are a bit short. Like, they had to bring on a kid at right back against us the other day, and he looks really good. His name escapes me. He looked brilliant. But the point I'm trying to make is, I can't remember his name. Connor Bradley. Was it Connor Bradley? I think it might be Connor Bradley. And I think that's where they're a little bit short. I think the midfield is a little bit short for them as well, in that like they're having to play McAllister as a 6 at times, which I don't think he is. So I think they've got a bit of work to do there. But in terms of changing the games at the attacking end of the pitch, then yeah, they're better off than us at the moment.
Clark is the other suggestion. It might have been from those.
I think that was the other young lad that came on. There
I
was
thought
two.
I thought it was Bradley. But yeah, there you go. Let's go to the questions. I've got to scroll up and find them now. Let's go to do you think Arteta will win the league after Pep and Klopp leave, says MIL Reaction.
I mean, when's that going to be? You know, when's that going to be?
Be next year.
Yeah, Pep could be next year. I think he could win the league. I think Arteta is on the right path as a manager, and obviously Arsenal are on the right path. But I think a lot of the reason why so many people were disappointed last season, even though that title challenge came a little bit unexpected and maybe premature, we all looked at it and we went, this is an opportunity, man, because City weren't really at it for a lot of last season. And then they seemed to click into gear in the second half, went on this incredible run and won the treble. But they're still good enough to be there or thereabouts, even when they're going through rocky patches. When it comes to Klopp, I think Klopp's better positioned to win it this year than Arsenal. I wouldn't have said it at the start of the season because I thought that we had overtaken them. I thought that their drop-off last season was too big a drop-off for them to bounce back immediately from. But based on the evidence we've seen so far, and maybe because they're in the Europa League as well and they're able to rotate more as a result of the competition being lesser and all the rest of it, you know, maybe that's given them what they needed, that little bit of, you know, balance to their comeback. And I think we're the third favourites to win the Premier League now. Will we win it after those guys leave? It's difficult to say because football changes a lot in a short space of time.
Agreed. I think Arsenal are aiming to win it well before those two leave, by the way. You know, it's the club's aim to win it whilst they're there. Make no mistakes about that. They're not waiting for those two to leave. And you got to remember that just because they leave doesn't mean the next coaches they bring in aren't going to be good also. But I am curious about where they both go next in terms of coaches, because they've obviously got at the moment the two best coaches in the world outside of Ancelotti. So that is going to be very, very interesting indeed. Cesar says, should Arsenal fans accept this early that we aren't signing anyone in January? Finally, we get to the topic of today's show.
Yeah. There's a part of me that still thinks that Arsenal are going to do some kind of deal between now and the end of the window. I think it will be a loan deal or a low value deal. It will be some kind of short-term fix in a position. And I think that will be due to concerns around the availability of some of our players rather than it being a part of the overall plan. You know, you can have a plan, but sometimes you need to improvise. I'm really worried about the left back position at this moment in time. I know that you could argue that maybe because, you know, Timber's a couple of months away and, you know, Tommy Asu's at the Asian Cup and hopefully he'll come back within a month or so, that maybe you can leave that and you can let it rumble on. Zinchenko's fitness is a concern for me. It was at times last season as well. I think fullback, left back, probably more so for me is the concern and the issue.
Yeah, MM saying Cedric close to Besiktas, apparently, according to Turkish. I've seen Portuguese sources saying this as well. I knew that there was Turkish interest in him, so it wouldn't surprise me. Spain as well, but Turkey would be a move. I don't think that changes things dramatically for us, to be honest, because I don't think there's going to be a fee, if any, really attached to that. We'll have to wait and see. But it does obviously mean that if we don't sign anyone at full back and say we have a crisis at right back and we don't have Cedric, you know, I reckon there will be suggestions that we shouldn't have let him go. That said, I think Cedric is of a level where I really don't think that there is much of a debate about if it's worth playing him or Raw Waters. I really don't think that is enough of a difference between the two for make me think that it was worth not letting Cedric go. Go on.
I find the Raw Waters thing really interesting because if you go back to not the last preseason, the one before, do you remember he started a game against Nuremberg, a preseason game?
Right side of centre back.
Yeah, and I looked at him and I thought, yeah, do you know what? And I think he played a bit at right back as well. And I looked at him and I thought, for him to be on the cusp this guy must have something about him. And I'm not saying he doesn't, right? But
Mm.
I've covered a few under 21s matches for the club over the last couple of seasons. And I've watched him on a few occasions. I watched him in the Youth Cup final as well.
Mm.
Last season, I was at that game, reporting on that game. And he doesn't stand out to me anymore.
Mm.
And, you know, people keep making the case, well, we should be pulling these young lads up and bringing them
Yeah.
in. I actually think, and, you know, some people would disagree with this, I think the gap between the first team at Arsenal and the academy players has never
Massive.
been greater. I don't think it's
Oh,
ever
you're
been bigger.
so spot on. Like, I'm so glad you said that.
I
I've been
just,
batting away this argument
mm,
about Arteta doesn't give youth a chance for like the last couple of weeks, because the argument that Arteta doesn't give youth a chance relies on him taking not only a massive risk on a kid that is not yet ready for senior action, and secondly, is in a position whereby there's so much pressure on Arteta to succeed. If he throws a kid in and it backfires, not only is it terrible for the kid, but that then gets used as a stick to beat Arteta with himself. And you're right. Like Waters, when I talk about Waters and Cedric, that's just, I think, how low my view is of Cedric's contribution to the team more than anything. It's not it's less of a thing about how highly I rate Raw Waters. It's more about how less I rate Cedric. But I think you're right. Also, going back to the question on transfers, that the fullback and defensive area for a short-term option is more likely. If Arsenal had the capacity to spend on a permanent player, it would be a midfielder for me to go for in this window. But a short-term player, I don't see a midfielder that you can get really that's any better than El Neni on like a short-term deal.
yeah.
So just keep El Neni.
Focus on getting the front lads back firing again. Like, however you do that, you know, it's obviously that's the job of the manager and of the coaching staff. But we all know it's in there. We all know they've got it. We saw it last season. And, you know, we just need them to click. It's not always as simple as going, oh, go and buy this, go and buy that. And when people say, oh, someone said to me in my comments earlier today, it was, I'm not saying that we're going to go and buy a Tony or anyone like that, but surely we're going to sign someone on loan. And I'm like, okay, so if a player is allowed by their club to go out on loan, it means one of two things. Either A, they're not good enough to get into that team. Therefore, are they good enough to get into our team? And B, there's been a falling out or something, or there's a financial reason that club want to just take a bit of weight off their shoulders, palm the wages off onto someone else. You still need all the parties to agree to that deal. It's no good going to AC Milan and saying, can we loan Rafael Leao? It's not going to happen, is it? So you're going to go and get a player that is of a certain standard. And sometimes you can find a solution for a very specific problem that you have. But generally, it isn't that simple. And it drives me wild that people think it is. You know, the gap, just quickly on that gap between the academy and, you know, the first team. He won't mind me saying this. I had a conversation with Jeremy Ali Adier when we were commentating on one of those academy games. And it wasn't a criticism of any of the young players or anything, but we were talking about the difference between the way it all works now and the difference between the way it worked when he was in the game. And he was saying that when he played at Arsenal, there was a reserve team, right? Used to play at Barnet, Underhill, all the rest of it. And it would be on a Monday night. And that game would be an opportunity for the younger players to learn and develop, but also some of the players in the squad that didn't get a game in the first team, they could go off to the reserve game, get a few minutes under their belt, whatever. And so it benefited them because it kept them sharp and it kept them, you know, ready for match action. But it also benefited the young players because they'd have sometimes 2 or 3 professionals of a higher level dropping down, and they could learn from them and they could play with them and they could work with them and all the rest of it. He mentioned a time where Dennis Bergkamp was coming back from injury and played 45 minutes or whatever it was with the reserves. That used to get you in the position where you're ready then when you're called upon to bring you into the first team picture. Now it's nothing like that. I prepared one day to do an under 21s game. And when I turned up, there were 7 players from the under 18s that had been pushed up a level because they decided to make that decision. I can't judge the under 18s playing at under 21s. And I certainly can't judge under 18s playing at 21s as to whether or not they're ready to play in the first team. So it's really different now.
No, it is. I can't believe you criticised the club, by the way, there, seeing as you've done some work for them. Unbelievable, really.
I know, terrible. Sack me.
Impossible, some might say. Louis says, how long do you give Arteta? And do you think the Cronkies will press the panic button? If so, then who would you get as a replacement?
Oh, God's sake. Replacement, I don't know. Not God's sake at the question, just I can't think off the top of my head of who I would go for. And that's why it's not.
Because there isn't one, mate.
Yeah, that's why it's not an easy thing, is it? And that's why it's
Yeah.
not as binary as saying in or out. Do I think the Cronkies will press the panic button? No, I don't.
No.
Again, I'm going to be critical of the club, maybe.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm going to do it. When the Super League debacle happened, we were all really, really critical of KSE, like really badly. Like we all looked at it and thought, what on earth are you doing? And they weren't the only ones that had signed up to this thing. And you got to say that, to be fair. But then there was a bit of a shift where I felt that the club and the ownership of the club were making a conscious effort to push forward, and they were making a conscious effort to stay more in line with the fans. They say, obviously, that they want to push on and that they want to go and win all the biggest trophies and all the rest of it. But there is going to come a point where their business interests come into play as well, as with all ownership, with the exception of a few ownerships that have unlimited funds, as we know, that are state-owned and all the rest of it. And, for them, money is not an object. It's not about business at all. Until we go and win something big, there's always going to be that question mark around KSE as to how far their ambitions actually go.
yeah.
So for me to be able to answer that question as to when they would press the panic button, I'd need to know for sure how far their ambitions go. And as good as things have been over the last couple of years, and as much as there's been money invested in, obviously the club's money, but been invested in sort of players, and they've restructured a few bits of debt that we had to make more money available. As good as that's been, I still don't know the full extent of their ambitions other than what they say. And they're never going to say anything other than they want the very best. So I'm unsure about that. I can't tell you at what point they'd press the panic button.
My view of it is that Stan is pretty detached.
Yep.
But that Josh is very invested in Arsenal. That's the sense I get from listening to him speak. That's the sense I get from the very rare opportunities I've had to see him when he's over at Arsenal games, when he's talking to Edu, and I overhear like conversations in past the mix zone and stuff. I think he is really invested. I think he's bought into the tribalism of it a bit. The Arsenal identity, the hatred of our rivals, the history. I think he's bought into that, and I think that he obviously is making the decisions of what KSE do with Arsenal. I think that it's just kind of a sign-off from Stan more than anything else, and that Josh is effectively the owner of Arsenal, if you like. That's how I view him, at least. Yeah. I know Stan will be the guy who owns KSE, but for me, I look at Josh as the owner of Arsenal making the decisions from an ownership level. And so when I see how much money has been invested since they took over, to the point where we are now at the border of profit and sustainability regulation, I know that they are, and that they want to win, and they want to make us competitive, and they want to take us to the level of winning things. That's all I can take it from those guys. And I think they also have bought very much into Arteta's project as well. I think that's not really too much up for debate. Very quick, we'll do some lightning round ones. AFC Cape Town really wants me to ask this to you. Would you take Mehdi Taremi from Porto on a short-term deal for us, considering he only has 6 months left at Porto?
Yeah, I like Mehdi Taremi, but is he going to move the needle massively in terms of what we've already got? I don't know. Is the honest answer to that. If he's only got 6 months left on his deal at Porto as well, what kind of short-term deal are we going to get? Are we going to have to pay? We're going to have to pay to get him out of Porto, basically.
Why would they sell to their Champions League opponent?
yeah, there's that as well. Would he be cup tied? Is that a thing in the Champions League?
I think they removed that rule, didn't they? I think they removed that rule with the Aubameyang. Do you remember Aubameyang? We signed from Dortmund, and he couldn't play in the Europa League because he played in the Europa League for Dortmund, but they removed that rule. I think they did. So yeah, no.
Regardless,
I'd rather play Havertz up there than Taremi.
Yeah, agreed.
Patrick says, hi guys, do you think Rice's defensive workload in midfield is too much in our current formation? We looked more secure against City in both games with Partey and Jorginho supporting him.
100%. I think right now, while we're going through this difficult phase, I think we're better off playing Jorginho and Rice in midfield with Odegaard. I think you get a better Odegaard when it's Rice and Jorginho as well, because it gives him a bit more of a platform to be a bit looser in his own position. And I've always said all season that for me, the balance in the midfield has been a bit off with this idea of playing Havertz as an 8. Now, Havertz has done what he can in terms of defensive contribution. I think his height gives us something when we're defending set pieces, for example. And that's fine. It's not a criticism of Havertz. I just don't think it's his game. I think that actually, yeah, Jorginho and Rice is the best combo for us. And I prefer it when we play with that almost double pivot. Rice has a bit of license, but Rice has got that mobility to get back in and help when he needs to. You can't leave Jorginho there on his own. You can get away in some games leaving Rice on his own because of the difference in mobility. But it is all about balance and combinations for me. And I like the Rice and Jorginho thing. Controversial take. I think Jorginho is a better progressive passer than Declan Rice. So I actually like
controversial.
I said it once and I got absolutely hammered for it. I think
really?
I think that Jorginho from the 6 will break the lines better with his passing. Yeah. I think Rice does get you up the pitch, but he does it by carrying the ball.
Yeah. And what's Jorginho's best trait as a footballer?
So for me, I actually prefer to have Jorginho at the 6 and Rice slightly next to him. If you've got Partey there, different story, because Partey is as good as Jorginho at doing that.
And better,
but I think that's where we've lost something.
Yeah, for sure. We missed that. And when Jorginho played against Liverpool with Rice ahead of him, we dominated that first half because of how we kind of Hugh Wizzy calls it walk football. We're just constantly going round. The 18-yard box. Like it's so true that is that just suffocation of the ball around their box, getting as many chances as you can, continuously recycling, and that's important. Matt G says, Tom, are you worried about your role as Arsenal's PR man by having a loose cannon like Harry on the show? Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to look at my my accreditation for Palace. I think it might get revoked.
It's been cancelled. What are you talking about? I just had an email now. It's been cancelled.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Marcus says, will Harry be joining you in recreating any footballing moments at the live show in February? I thought my Martinelli impression was pretty good. Did you disagree with me, by the way? Do you remember the game against Nottingham Forest where Martinelli did that backheel pass to Nketiah? And
yeah, you said he meant it, and I said he didn't.
Thought it was intentional. I think it was intentional still. I'm guaranteed. I'm so sure.
He was trying to do the Zidane turn and he messed it up.
Okay. Yeah, we're still not going to see eye to eye on this. Chris says, hi, lads. With the expected departures in the summer, do you worry by doing nothing in January? We're leaving ourselves with a lot to do. I don't think we have a choice, Chris, sadly. That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't think we have a choice either. Yeah, I think, you'd like to take a step in January, wouldn't you? So that you're ahead of schedule when you go into the summer and you've got less to do in terms of getting to where you eventually want to get to. But no, it's one of those things. There's no point in debating it because we've got no choice, basically.
No, exactly. Clive, and a really annoyingly good question. If Rice went to City, would he play 6 or 8? And the reason why it's such a good question, because I saw it and I was thinking, in my head, I went, 6. And then I went, The thing is, with Rodri's been so good going forwards and getting clutch goals and clutch assists for them at times. I feel like he would play deeper. But then I look at Arsenal and think, well, if Partey's back and Jorginho's back, I'm playing Rice ahead of them with them deeper. It's a really good question. Would he play? Was the question. Would they rotate him?
It is a really, really good question. I don't think that Rice is as good as Rodri. I don't think that's unfair to say. I don't think that he can give you what Rodri gives you in the attacking third as well. I think Rodri's got a bit more guile about him. I think he's got more to his game, essentially. I think Rodri is he's the prototype, deep lying midfield player. He's exactly what you want in every department. I think Pep would have looked at Rice if he had him there and would think that given that he likes the likes of Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne in those midfield positions, I think he would have seen Rice as a little bit too clunky to play as an 8. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I think he'd have
he's
him as a
not
6.
the thing about eights, other than Pep's eights, other than De Bruyne, who is just a force of nature. Like he's just different. You know, he's one of those players. If you have them, you play them. You know, no matter what your system is, you play them. And other than that, he likes his eights to be dynamic, low center of gravity, quick bursts, your Silvers, your Fodens when you play them in there, or you get your Gundogan, to be fair, who is perhaps a bit different. They miss Gundogan this year. They really do. And when I saw the links to him in the summer, I was desperate for us to get Gundogan. I know it was kind of the whole, well, we got Zinni, we got Jesus, we're taking on a player that they've gone, but they've not. The difference between that is they went from Zinchenko and they've now got Gvardiol and Ake, who I think are better than Zinchenko overall as players. I know Gvardiol has had his issues, but I still think I've watched him at Leipzig and he's a silly player when he does actually get up to his best ability. Ake has been an unbelievable signing for City. Brilliant footballer. And I think they are a step up on Zinchenko. I think that's controversial. Jesus obviously replaced by Haaland. But Gundogan's not been replaced. They didn't bring someone in there. They brought Kovacic in. He's not better than Gundogan. So that's the difference there. And that's why I was pining for us to really see if we could persuade him to come to Arsenal. But yeah, that maybe is... Yeah, Rice May, I guess, would have probably been ahead of Rodri if I was to real push it.
I've been thinking about this and like while you've been speaking there, and I actually think that if Rice had gone to Manchester City, you might have seen them do things a little bit differently. You know, at the moment they've got like Gvardiol playing as a left back or Ake playing as a left back, and that is because they want that extra bit of security in a central area when they lose the ball and Rodri's caught up the pitch.
Yeah, and Stones has caught up the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. I think if they had a Declan Rice, you might see, and he'd go into the side as maybe as an 8 on paper, but he'd be part of that, you know, that midfield duo with Rodri. I think you might have seen Pep then go for a more adventurous fullback rather than a centre back at fullback. So I think he might have tried to he might have tried to compensate for, you know, the lack of attacking threat that maybe you get from Rice in comparison to Gundogan, for argument's sake, by having a more adventurous, more traditional, more forward-thinking fullback. I don't know. It's a really good question.
It is a really good question. The scariest thing about that whole thing is it's just the idea that Rice went to City instead of Arsenal. That'd have been game over. Over.
There's a reason, isn't there, Tom, that they went, okay, don't worry about it, sort of thing. Like they were in, and nobody's going to convince me that the price is what put them off, because Man City can pay it. There was a reason, you know, obviously people say that he wanted to come to Arsenal and that was already sort of in place. Yeah, maybe that was true, but City would have still backed themselves to be able to convince him. So it couldn't have been that much of a priority for them, is the point I'm making, as much as it was for us.
It was a sake of it signing. It would have been a signing him to stop anyone else getting him signing. And I don't think you can justify going over £100 million for a player that you don't absolutely need. Grealish, they needed to go and get Grealish. I think they needed a Grealish in their team. They needed to get Haaland for obvious reasons. You know, they needed another top defender in Gvardiol, which they got, but they didn't need Rice, and so that's why they ended up just saying, "Okay, Arsenal, you can. We're not going to go that high." Arsenal needed Rice, and that's certainly been proven this season. We're going to end the show there. Thank you so much, guys, for listening and tuning in. Very much appreciate your time as always. Harry, thank you for your time, mate. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, mate. Really appreciate it.
Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, check out the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. It's on YouTube. I think Tom's very kindly tagged it in the title. So click there, go and subscribe, all the rest of it. And I promise I'm going to be more motivated over the next few weeks as we get back into it. Hopefully we get 3 points at the weekend, then everything's good again. Come on, you Gunners.
Indeed. Big game. I dread to think about the result of being anything other than a win. I really do.
I'm leaving the country. I'm leaving the country if
I've been telling people for quite many months that I've been really good at disassociating Arsenal when things don't go well. But if things don't go well this weekend, my goodness me, it is going to be a challenge to be unaffected in my mood following
Well,
that game, because I really have done well. Go on.
Saturday's also my wife's birthday, so for her sake, I hope that Arsenal get a result, because I'm not going to be great dinner company in the evening if we drop points against Palace.
Yeah. Oh goodness me. Now we're going to win. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fine, people. We'll have a preview show, of course, for the Crystal Palace game coming toward the end of this week. So make sure you subscribe and turn those notifications on so you can be alerted when that will be dropping. I'll be live, of course, for you tomorrow at 8 a.m. You can find Harry at the Chronicles of a Gooner on YouTube, and of course you can find me at Harry Symeou on Twitter. You can see his handle on the screen. Make sure you go and give him a follow. If you enjoy this stuff, you'll enjoy Harry's stuff, I can assure you. So thank you for listening. Drop a like, subscribe, all the usual YouTube-y stuff, and I will see you bright and early tomorrow. Have a great day. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy, and as always, up the Arsenal.